I was taking a nap when my husband went through my phone and discovered my affair. This happened next. Not all that glitter is gold. I ruined my marriage as a result of my greed. I don't even know where to start my story from. I'm so ashamed of my actions. I cheated on my husband with his boss, who happens to be my ex-boyfriend. Don't judge me, guys. I honestly regret my actions. I thought I could literally eat my cake and have it. Everything backfired in a twinkle of an eye. Now I'm at a crossroad and I don't know what to do. I honestly don't wish this on my worst enemy. I'm in a state of a fiasco right now. I regret everything. If I could turn back the hands of time, I would do things differently. I cheated on my husband with his boss, who is my ex-boyfriend, and now he's on the verge of finding out. I regret my actions. I don't know what to do. I'm at a crossroads right now. I don't want to lose my marriage, and most importantly, I don't want my husband to stop working for my ex-boyfriend. Don't judge me, guys. Before you judge me, please listen to my story. Maybe then you would understand why I did what I did. Hi guys, my name is Olivia, and I am 29 years old. The name of my husband is Anthony, and he is 30 years old. Anthony and I got married 2 years ago. Anthony is the best thing that has ever happened to me. He is the absolute love of my life. My marriage to Anthony was a beautiful one. He pampered me and treated me like a queen. I never lacked anything. He provided everything I needed, and even placed my parents on a monthly stipend. He got me my very first car immediately after our wedding, and on our first wedding anniversary, he bought a house for me. Anthony is not just a generous giver, he is a very kind man. I don't know what came over me. I ruined my beautiful marriage. I can still remember that fateful day like it was yesterday. Our lives changed forever. We went from living in a comfortable apartment to living in a shared apartment. It still feels like a dream. I practically lost everything on that fateful day, including my husband. Anthony became a shadow of himself. He went from being a happy, jovial guy to a complete sadist. He always snapped at me for any little thing. He was doing some menial job, but that was barely enough. We couldn't afford the luxury lifestyle we were used to any longer. Anthony's boss sized everything we owned. The cars, house, and even his accounts were frozen. He was almost arrested, but the properties seized were enough to cover for the money. At some point, I got tired of everything. I got so used to living like a queen that I wasn't happy with the way we were living. Anthony kept assuring me that everything would be fine, but that wasn't enough. I wanted him to be as rich as he was before. I decided to help him out. I wished I never did. If I could go back in time, I would do things differently. Seeing Anthony sad always made me ask my ex-boyfriend for a favor. Don't judge me, guys. I was helpless and desperate. I wanted to help my husband back on his feet. Jake was willing to help, but on a condition. Jake proposed I sleep with him just once and he would secure my husband a good job in a reputable company. I refused initially, but decided to go through with it after pondering on the whole situation for some days. I told Anthony about the job offer and he was very excited. The joy on his face when he heard someone was willing to give him a job was the only sign I needed to go ahead. I wanted to see him back on his feet again, and most importantly, I wanted to start living large again. Anthony loves being an engineer. It's something he loves doing. So he was very happy when I told him about the job. Getting a good job ever since he lost his job has been hard because no one wants to employ an alleged thief. So he was excited that someone was willing to give him a chance. I met with Jake the next day and we slept together. I felt horrible at first, but I shook off the guilt and convinced myself I wasn't wrong. I was doing everything for my beloved husband. Jake kept his promise and offered Anthony a job in his company, but unfortunately I couldn't bring myself to tell Anthony the whole truth. I didn't tell him Jake was my ex-boyfriend. I actually lied to him. I lied to him that Jake was my cousin's fiancé. I know the man married. I knew there was no way he would accept the job if he knew Jake was my ex-boyfriend. Anthony is a very principled man. He would rather remain jobless than seek favors from someone he knew I dated before. So I kept everything to myself. I cried myself to bed for 3 consecutive days. I was in denial for some days. I couldn't believe I cheated on my husband and broke our marriage vows. I was emotionally down. Anthony noticed my mood and asked what was wrong with me. Guys, honestly, at that point, I wanted to confess everything to him, but I didn't have the courage to do that. I was scared of what he would do if he found out I cheated on him. After thinking of how everything would go wrong if he finds out, I lied to him that nothing was wrong with me and that I was just under the weather. At that point, I knew I had to shake up the guilt before I got caught. One thing about telling lies is because you need more lies to cover up. I wasn't happy lying to my husband. We promised each other that we would be transparent in our marriage, but here I was, breaking that promise. My affair with Jake continued. I couldn't bring myself to stop seeing Jake. The truth is, Jake is my first love. I had known him ever since we were kids. The only reason I left him was because he wasn't rich. I dumped him to marry Anthony because Anthony was a very rich man when we met, and Jake wasn't earning much then, but fortunately for him, he is filthy rich now. I started regretting not being patient with Jake when I saw how rich he became when I left. I wished I was a little bit patient with him. Maybe I wouldn't have ended up with Anthony. Don't get me wrong, guys, Anthony is a good man, but I never really loved him. His generosity was what drew me to him, and he wasn't physically attractive like Jake. Everything was going so well. My affair with Jake continued to blossom. It got to a stage that I was no longer feeling bad about cheating on Anthony. Although at times I do feel bad for him, I knew what I was doing was wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to stop. Jake, on the other hand, was busy spoiling me with gifts. He was always gifting things, from expensive clothes to shoes and jewelry. My love affair with Jake continued to the point that we were no longer discreet. One day, Anthony almost caught me with Jake. I was on a date with Jake. I didn't know someone took a picture of me and Jake together and sent it to Anthony. Anthony called me and inquired where I was. I didn't know what was happening, so I lied to him I was at home. He kept calling and repeating the same question. It was at that point I knew something was wrong. I quickly ended my dinner date with Jake, but luckily for me, I saw Anthony's cousin at the same restaurant. She was trying to hide, but I caught a glimpse of her. At that point, everything finally made sense. Apparently, she took a picture of me and Jake. On my way home, I was scared and visibly shaking. It felt like my entire world was crashing down. I knew I had to act fast, else I would lose my marriage. Luckily for me, I got home before Anthony. That gave me enough time to think of something. When Anthony arrived that day, he was angry and fuming with anger. I quickly came up with a lie to save my marriage. I told him I went to see his boss with my cousin. You guys remember I told him Jake was my cousin's fiancé, right? So I told him I went there with my cousin to properly thank Jake for offering him a job, and that at some point my cousin caught an urgent call and left us there to go attend something. So he asked me why I lied earlier. I told him I wanted it to be a surprise. Somehow he brought the lie. That night was very emotional for me. He apologized for doubting and not trusting me. He made me promise never to lie to him again. At that point, I felt bad that I didn't know when I started crying uncontrollably. Here I was, cheating on the only man in the whole world that I know would gladly give up his life for me. Anthony doesn't deserve this. I know he would break into pieces if he ever finds out I have been cheating on him and lying to cover up my extramarital affair. I'm at a crossroad right now. I feel bad for my husband. What should I do? Should I confess everything to my husband Anthony and stop my affair with Jake? Or should I just enjoy all the attention and love I'm getting from Jake? Please, I need advice. Update. Hi guys, I'm back to update you guys. I didn't confess. I couldn't bring myself to do that. I didn't want to lose my marriage and I didn't want to break Anthony's hearts. I continued my affair with Jake, but unfortunately for me, I got. Yes, guy, Anthony caught me. I thought I would be the one to confess everything to Anthony. I never envisioned getting caught by Anthony. On one fateful day, I forgot my phone in the sitting room and took a nap. I don't know what prompted Anthony to go through my phone because he had never done that before. That was how he discovered I was cheating on him, but he didn't know who I was cheating on him with. Hell literally broke loose when Anthony discovered I was cheating on him. He woke me up from my nap and dragged me out. I was shocked because I have never seen him like that before. He started hauling insults at me. I was lost for a few seconds. It was when he threw the phone at me and saw those messages that I understood what he was talking about. He started throwing my things out one after the other and asked me to leave his house. I couldn't believe my eyes, guys. It was as if Anthony was acting under the influence of something. I was in shock. I fell on my knees and started begging him to forgive me, but all efforts to get to listen to me proved abortive. The more I tried, the angrier he became. The worst part was that I was literally freezing to the death. He told me he was no longer interested in the marriage, that I should be prepared to receive divorce papers. He told me he started suspecting I was cheating on him a long time ago and was only waiting on the right opportunity to get evidence. I tried explaining to him that everything I did was for him, but he paid deaf ears to me. After exhausting all options, I decided to resort to emotional blackmail. I told him he should have gone ahead and tried, but he can't divorce me because we will be financially ruined because he would lose his job if he divorced me. I told him I was cheating on him with his boss, who is my ex-boyfriend, and that I did it to help him secure a job. I can still remember the shock on his face when I told him this. He almost had a heart attack. He got more upset when I told him I did everything for his sake. At that point, nothing prepared me for what he did next. Anthony gave me 3 dirty slaps. It happened so fast I was shocked, guys. I never knew I married a violent man. Anthony was fuming with rage. I picked a few of my things and left. I went to my best friend's place. I wanted to go to Jake's house, but I called him and he told me he was on a business trip. All through that day, I was sad. I didn't know Anthony was an ingrate. How could he still throw me out even though I told him I did everything for him? Don't judge me, guys. I'm not justifying my affair with Jake, but how inconsiderate can Anthony be? He didn't care that I was freezing outside. He even gave me 3 dirty slaps. My cheeks were swollen. I cried to sleep that day. It took getting caught for me to realize I wronged Anthony. At that point, I made up my mind to break things off completely with Jake. Suddenly, all the expensive clothes, shoes, and jewelry didn't matter to me anymore. All I wanted was my husband. I was 100% confident that we could work on our marriage. I was so sure Anthony would not be able to divorce me since he would risk losing his job if he ever did that. I knew what that job meant to him. That day, I was unable to sleep. Time went by very fast. I got a call from Anthony the next day. The joy on my face that day when he called me was magical. I had butterflies in my stomach. He asked me to come to the house and he had a surprise for me. I was very excited that I didn't even remember to shower before dashing out. I think the thought of reuniting with my husband must have clouded my sense of reasoning, but nothing prepared me for the surprise I got when I arrived at our apartment. I was surprised to see my parents and even Anthony. I was surprised why almost everyone was gathered there. I tried greeting everyone, but they all ignored me, including my parents. I was dumbfounded. While I was still trying to make sense of everything, Anthony arrived and everything began to make sense. It was then it occurred to me that Anthony called me there to disgrace me. He brought out his phone and showed everyone compromising pictures of me and Jake together. Apparently, he sent those pictures to his phone the day he had access to my phone. I was embarrassed. I wanted the ground to open so badly so I could disappear. My parents felt so embarrassed they were ashamed of me. The look on their faces said it all. It was at that point I bursted into tears. I couldn't hold my tears any longer. How can everyone judge me without hearing from me what actually happened? Even my parents that were supposed to stand up for me bowed their heads in shame. Worst part is, Anthony narrated the story in a way that painted me like the devil himself. He told everyone I married him for his money and not because I really loved him. He said it took him losing his job to realize that. He told them how I changed and turned into a monster immediately. He lost his job and could no longer provide for me. He didn't stop there. He went ahead to tell them I started having an affair with my ex-boyfriends for money when he couldn't afford to cater for my numerous, and how I made one of my ex-boyfriends employ him. At that point, I could not stand the defamation. I decided to talk. I told everyone Anthony was lying and that everything I did was for him. I told them I only cheated because I wanted to secure a job for my husband. It was at that point Anthony's mom stood up and gave me a dirty slap. She started calling me names. My parents couldn't take the embarrassment any longer, so they walked out. I ran after them to explain everything to them, but they warned me never to ever come near them. I went back to my friend's place because Anthony was still angry. The anger was justified. I thought he would forgive me, and Will would work everything out when he was calmer, but Anthony proved me wrong. 3 days later, I got a call from someone who introduced himself as a lawyer. I gave the lawyer my address, and in less than 30 minutes, he arrived with divorce papers. I was shocked, guys. I almost passed out. It took everything in me for me to keep standing on my feet. I flinged the divorce papers away and instantly booked a ride to Anthony's house. I was shocked when I got there and the house was empty. I only met my things outside. Anthony burnt all the designer clothes and shoes Jake bought for me. He burnt all my valuables to ashes, things that cost millions. I don't even know how he saw them because I hid those things carefully. Luckily for me, I saw the expensive diamonds Jake got for me scattered on the ground. I picked them up with tears in my eyes. I was seriously weeping, guys. I never knew I married a monster. Out of rage, I picked up my phone and called Jake. I asked to please do me a favor and sack Anthony immediately when he got back from his business trip. I wanted to teach him a lesson he would never forget. I know he will come back crying to me when he loses the job. Then we will settle, and I will ask Jake to give him back the job. But unfortunately for me, things didn't go the way I anticipated. I got the biggest shock of my life when Jake told me. He was informed Anthony resigned from the job. I couldn't believe my ears. I felt like my whole world had crumbled. It was game over for me, guys. I tried calling Anthony several times, but he wasn't responding to my calls. He even blocked me at some point. After all efforts to reach him proved abortive. I gave up and decided to sign the divorce papers. It wasn't easy to make that decision. I wanted to fight for our marriage, but Anthony wasn't leaving any room for that. Soon the divorce proceedings started. It was mentally draining. I was exhausted all through. Every time we came to the court, I tried talking to Anthony to tell him the whole truth, but he refused to listen to me. He wouldn't even look at me. He despised me, and he didn't hide that fact. Since there was no property to share or children involved, our divorce was finalized sooner than expected. That was the worst day of my life. I cried all through that day. I knew I just lost a gem. I knew I would never find a man like Anthony ever again. Anthony was a good man. Even when he lost his job, he still made sure he provided food for me. I never went to bed hungry. Anthony put my needs before his. Where will I ever find such a man again? Update. Hi guys, I'm back again to update you guys on my life after the divorce. After the divorce, I decided to just forge ahead and continue with my life. I got tired of crying my eyes out. Worst of all was that I was very broke. I used all my savings to pay the lawyer that handled the divorce case. In fact, the money wasn't enough. I had to borrow from my friend to complete the payment. I decided to go back to Jake since I was already divorced and single. I went to his house because he had not been picking my calls. I got another heartbreak when I arrived at Jake's house. I met a lady who introduced herself to me as Jake's fiancée. I was shocked, guys. A few seconds later, Jake arrived and was furious at me for coming to his house. He dragged me out and warned me never to come to him ever again. He told me he only used me and wanted to prove the point that I was a gold digger. I was shocked, guys. I wasn't expecting to hear that from him. I felt ashamed of myself. He said he only took revenge on me. He told me he was happy I'm divorced and that now he's glad I finally have the feeling of what it means to be dumped. I was sad, guys. I felt used. He threw me out of his house and asked me never to return again. Everything felt like a film trick. I never expected such a dubious character from him. Anyways, I cleaned my eyes and decided to count my losses. I decided to move on, but it wasn't easy. I was broke. I would have sold the designers Jake gifted me if Anthony didn't burn them to hashes. After searching for jobs with getting any, I decided to sell off the diamonds. I took the diamonds to a jewelry store, and to my surprise, they told me the diamonds were fake. I felt embarrassed. I was almost arrested for trying to sell off a fake diamond. Can you guys imagine? I'm sure the designers' clothes were fake too. How gullible can one be? Jake took advantage of my naiveness and ruined my marriage. I can't believe I allowed him to destroy the beautiful union I built with my husband. I was perplexed. Everything was a lie. Jake fooled me. He saw how helpless I was and he took advantage of me. But unfortunately, it was too late to cry over spilled milk. Anthony, on the other hand, got his back. His boss called him back after he discovered Anthony was betrayed by his business partner and that he didn't actually steal the money. He got everything back. The house and cars were replaced with even a better one. I wished I was patient enough. I wished I was content and didn't allow my greed take over me. I became depressed. Suddenly, nothing made sense to me any longer. I became a shadow of myself. The thought of everything made me sick. Now I understand the saying that patience is a virtue. If I was patient enough, I would have been living in luxury right now, but my greed destroyed everything. I lost everything as a result of my greed. That's my story, guys. I'm not proud of what I have done. I take full accountability for my actions. I hope someone out there learns from my story. The grass isn't always greener on the other side. Don't lose a good man because of material things. I learned the hard way. Believe me, everything wasn't worth it in the end. Most importantly, learn to be patient with your partners. Patience is a virtue everyone should possess. Good day, Redditors. I'm actually very excited to share my experience with you all today. Consequently, I know there will be several questions regarding the motive of this post, and I'm ready to answer all the questions. I'm in a very good mood because something very comical happened to me. Something that I'll like my dear Redditors to know. My ex-wife had the audacity to show up at my house yesterday. I thought she'd gotten lost or something, but no. She came intentionally. The funniest part is that the foolish woman wants me back in her life. She finally wants her husband and child back. I can assure you all that nothing like that is going to happen. I'd rather die than have that woman in my life again. After she came back here yesterday, I knew I had to hatch up a plan. I don't want her in my life or my child's life, and I will make sure I fight her till I die. But I don't know of my daughter. She might say she doesn't want her back, but we all know that children are gullible. It does not help that she was an infant and had no recollection of what transpired years ago. That's why I'm here to share my story with Reddit so you all can direct me to the right part. My motive is to make sure my daughter hates her forever, and I'm going to fight for that with everything in me. But before we do that, let me tell you all a little bit about me and my witchy ex-wife. My ex-wife, Sophia, F33, and I, Nathaniel, M35, were married for just 2 years and a half and knew each other for 2 years before we got married. We had our daughter 2 years into our marriage. We were first-time parents and knew nothing about raising a child, but we were ready to make an effort. Or so I thought. Barely 3 months after my daughter was born, my wife packed her belongings and told me she could no longer stay married to me. "I'm done, Nathaniel. This isn't working for me. This is not who I am." Those were the exact words she said to me 10 years ago. How could a married woman with an infant just wake up one day and say she was done? How is that even supposed to make sense? I tried asking her what her reasons were, and all she could come up with was the fact that she was tired of raising a baby when she felt like a baby herself. For reference sake, I'll mention this again. Sophia was 23 years old by that time, and according to her, she was just a baby. Sophia said she was overwhelmed with our marriage and having a baby only made it worse for her, so she took her bags and left the house. Fuck it. I had a rough life even before I got married to Sophia. I practically had the worst childhood ever and was a victim of domestic violence. I grew up the hard way, so I built up my walls around me and was never one to care about any emotional shit. But what Sophia did that day got an emotion out of me. Anger. That's the emotion Sophia's actions got out of me, and trust me, that's a big deal. If Sophia had just left the marriage before we had our daughter, Daniela, I'd have been fine. I wouldn't even give a fuck what she ended up doing with her life. But she chose to abandon a little child who did nothing wrong. The moment Sophia left the house that day, I swore that she was dead to me. She has been dead to me for the past 10 years, and I swear on my life that she will be dead to me forever. Nothing in this world will ever make me take that woman back in my life. I'm not that stupid, and honestly, I don't even give a fuck what happens to her. I don't care why she came back, and I honestly don't want to know. When she came back yesterday with her mother pleading and wailing like a dog, I did not even look at her twice. I asked security to take both her and her mother out of my house. If Sophia and I didn't have our daughter, there would have been no reason for this post. But we have a daughter. My daughter is just 10 years old. Daniela is still in her first year of high school, and I don't want to take any chances. Daniela was just an infant when Sophia left her. She does not remember any of it, so it'll be hard for her to stay away. Almost every single day, I remind Daniela how Sophia left her when she was just a little baby. Many people tell me I'm wrong for doing that, and it's not right, but I don't care. I did not care back then, and I don't care now. Some relatives say it's not good to ruin the relationship between the child and the mother. But as far as I am concerned, the only mother figure in my daughter's life is my girlfriend, Esther. Sophia is just a stupid mistake I made in my life, and I don't plan on repeating that mistake ever again. I want to ask you all, my dear Redditors, to give me tips on how to make my innocent high school daughter despise Sophia even more. I need to make sure there are no chances of Sophia crawling back into her life. I know that Sophia doesn't have a conscience, so why should I? To be specific, my dear Redditors, I plan on damaging their relationship beyond repair. A woman who can abandon an infant can do anything again in the future. I want to protect my daughter because I know she doesn't have a mind of her own yet. As for me, this is also important because I don't want to see Sophia near my house in this lifetime and many lifetimes to come. The only way to do that is to cut all ties with her. The only tie remaining is my daughter. I want to teach her a lesson, and that lesson is that you don't just leave and come only when it is convenient for you. Help me here, Redditors, it's urgent. Updating. Thank you to all my fellow Redditors who have been helping me out for the past 2 weeks. Yes, you all have been helping me out because your comments and ideas have gone a very long way. To be honest, I already have a ruthless plan to get Sophia out of my child's life, but for the sake of morals, I'll just let that one slide. I want to do this in a way that will only ruin Sophia's relationship with Daniela. I don't want anything to get in the way of my relationship with my daughter. We have been together for 10 years, and I don't see any reason why that should change. A lot of you advise me to take actions fast as there is a possibility of Sophia going to court. Yes, I know that's a big possibility, and that's why I practically ran to Reddit. I know I'll win the case hands down. I'm ready to spend all my money on it if it means I'll damage Sophia beyond repair, but a custody battle will only make my daughter's life complicated. I'm ready to fight dirty with Sophia as long as my daughter doesn't have to know about any of it. She's the only reason I haven't taken reflex steps yet. Every day for the past 2 weeks have made me more angry than ever. The level of hatred and disgust I feel for Sophia cannot be quantified. I hate that woman with every vein in me, and I wish her the worst every day of my life. What makes me even more angry is the fact that she had the audacity to come to my house after 10 years. Sophia disappeared for 1 decade, then came back like she is a fucking magician who did a trick and disappeared. Her stupid mother even had the audacity to follow her here. The same woman that came back 1 day after Sophia left just so she could finish packing what her daughter forgot. If not for the possibility of legal charges, I wanted to strangle that woman that day. But no, violence is never the answer, so I have to do this calmly. My definition of calmly is also going to be heartless because I have waited for an opportunity to show Sophia what it's like to just wake up and lose it all. Okay, let me catch up with all of you and get you on board with all that's been happening. After posting on Reddit 2 weeks ago, I decided to take my daughter out to get ice cream the next day. Of course, I had an ulterior motive behind doing that. I don't let her take ice cream more than 4 times. I'm a month and she already exhausted those chances, but I decided to take her out for ice cream, so I called Tell Her a Story. While we were at the park, I explained to her that her mother practically abandoned her when she was a child. Listen guys, I've told her that story many times, but that day, I had to make sure I left no stone unturned. Some might call it emotional blackmail, but I do not care. I have protected Daniela for 10 long years. I watched her come home from school and say kids were asking her why she did not have a mother to drop her off. It was hard for her to grow up with only nannies as the mother figures in her life. Most of my family members are countries away from us. Daniela assured me that she will never take Sophia back into her life. Honestly, I was not ready to take the word of a 10-year-old seriously, lol. My daughter is extremely innocent and kind. I'm sure all Sophia needs to do is fall on her feet, and then Daniela will take her back with open arms. I am here to make sure that never happens. My only mission here is not just to make my daughter hate Sophia. I also want to make Sophia regret everything she did 10 years ago. I want her to possibly tear up for the rest of her life. I know, that's heartless. Do I care? No. To my surprise, some days after taking Daniela to the park, I encountered Sophia at a restaurant. Thankfully, Daniela was at school and I was alone at the restaurant. Sophia had the nerve to walk up to me and tell me we needed to speak. I ignored her and ordered what I wanted to order. Sophia did not relent. She stood with me all through my order and dared to sit on the table I was seated on. Of course, she knew what she was doing. We were in a restaurant and we had people all around us. Of course, I could not start lashing out on her and I could not try to do anything to her. If not for the fact that I was a regular at that restaurant, I would have embarrassed the hell out of Sophia. Well, I did end up embarrassing her at the end of the day. Esther lived near the restaurant, so I called her and asked her to come there so we could have lunch. I know some of you might accuse me of trying to make Sophia jealous. Well, I don't know what my motive was exactly. One thing I know for sure is that I wanted to embarrass her and make her feel small. Whether she felt jealous or not is none of my business. In fact, that would be a plus for me. My girlfriend Esther is actually very possessive. I like that about her, and that day, at the restaurant, I loved her possessive side even more. I already told Esther about Sophia's return days before that day, and Esther was very pissed off. She even asked me several times if I still had any feelings for Sophia. Of course, I assured her that I didn't, but we all know how women are. Esther did not take my word for it, and to be honest, I liked that. When Esther arrived at the restaurant that day and saw Sophia sitting at my table, she practically sprinted to sit beside me. Esther did not only glare at Sophia, but she went as far as asking her if she had no shame at all. She asked Sophia why she was sitting at the table of her boyfriend when she was clearly not invited. Sophia was shocked to hear that I had a girlfriend. I find that very funny right now that I think about it. I mean, did she expect me to spend the rest of my life waiting for her to return before I moved on, or what? At first, I just sat back and watched how Sophia was struggling to defend herself, but when I had enough, I asked her to get out. She was taken aback and did not make any move to get up, but I stood up, cussed at her, then made a huge scene. When I say I made a huge scene, I mean I made sure the drama attracted security. I told them Sophia was intruding and disturbing my girlfriend and I. Esther seconded to my claims, so Sophia was escorted out of the restaurant immediately. We had caused a scene and people practically abandoned their foods to stare at us. I did not care because all I wanted to do was embarrass Sophia, and it was a very successful execution. Esther and I finished our lunch that day before leaving the restaurant. I got home late in the evening because I spent the day with Esther. It was summer break, so my mother picked Daniela up earlier that day and they went on a trip together. I was alone at home that night, but I did not expect any guest. It was almost 10 p.m. when my doorbell rang. It was raining heavily that night and I did not expect anyone to come knock at my door. When I opened the door, I found the security man standing there. When I asked him what he wanted, he told me that someone was looking for me. I did not expect anyone late in the night, so I asked him if he recognized who it was. He told that it was the same woman who came to the house some days ago. I did not need a seer to tell me he was talking about Sophia. I was so angry that she had the nerve to show up at my house, again. I told the security man to tell her I was coming outside and that she should wait for me. The security man assured me he'll deliver my message. After he left, I locked my door, took a shower, and went to bed. Whether or not Sophia waited for me all night and got drenched in the rain, I didn't really care. I wanted her to know what waiting for someone felt like. When I woke up the next morning, I felt so happy to have left her outside, even after promising her that I'd come outside to see her. It was intentional, and I'll do it again if I have the chance. I don't think anyone would truly understand the amount of disgust I feel for that woman. Her presence practically makes me angry and uneasy. I mean, how could anyone sane enough to be called a human being just wake up one morning and leave everything behind? Everything, including a 3-month-old child. Anyone who is capable of doing that is not a human being but a beast, and I am not going to be hesitant when it comes to treating her like one. When she left 10 years ago, she practically vacated the city. I did not try looking for her, but my mother tried her best to find her. I couldn't care less, mostly because I treated betrayal with hatred. I don't have the time to dwell on the past. The only part of what Sophia did that got to me was leaving Daniela behind. That was it for me. But my mother did not relent. She kept looking for Sophia all over the city. After months of searching, she found out that Sophia had left the city with her mother. Some people said she eloped with a lover. Others said she just vacated the city. I don't know what really happened because, like I said, she's been dead to me for 10 years. I spent those years taking care of my daughter instead of looking for an adult that chose to make her own decisions. So guys, let me tell you what happened 2 days after I left Sophia in the rain. She practically stormed into my house with her mother and brother. I don't know how they even got past the security man at the gate. Sophia rained curses on me and told me how heartless I was for leaving her in the rain. She got teary-eyed and practically collapsed on the floor. She cried her eyes out and said I was making things difficult for her. All I want is my family. I want my family back, Nathaniel. Stop making this hard for me. Those were the words that came out of her mouth that day. I'm making your life hard? Are you sure you are mentally stable? When you left your daughter 10 years ago, how hard do you think her life was? How hard do you think her childhood was? And you stand here to tell me your life is hard. I pray it gets harder than this. My dear Redditors, that was my reply to her stupid claims. I had to make sure she understood the gravity of every decision she made. You know the funny thing? Sophia had the audacity to play that victim game. You know what they do in all those movies, right? One parent abandons the child, then comes back years later only to say, I'm here now. I was not in her life, but I am ready to make things right. Sophia decided to say those things too. I don't know if she thought I'd get moved by her display and suddenly tell her how much I missed her. Maybe that's what she thought, but that's definitely not what I did. In fact, I enjoyed seeing her rolling on the floor like a fucking mad bitch. I enjoyed each and every moment of it. I practically had a blast, and I am not even joking. After her stupid performance, it was her brother's turn to speak J-Guns. He told me Sophia was sorry and all she wanted to do was come back to her family. He said I should be a man and forgive her for everything she did and that it was all a mistake and blah blah blah. My dear Redditors, do you see what I'm working with here? I'm practically working with animals. They speak like people who have been out of touch with reality for years. To be honest, I feel like they have been out of touch with reality their whole lives. That's truly the only explanation in my head that makes sense right now. Because I don't understand how a grown man would stand in front of me and ask me to be a man by forgiving his sister who packed her things and left her marriage, a marriage that produced a beautiful daughter. I had to ask him where he was for the past 10 years and why he was not man enough to ask his sister why she abandoned a little child that knew nothing about the world. He stood there like the dumb fool he was and could not even look me in the eyes. I also had to ask him why he did not come to see his niece for the past 10 years. He tried defending himself, but I got so angry that I landed a punch in his face. I could resist putting my hands on a woman, but there's nothing stopping me from laying my hands on a dumb man. Yes, Redditors, I got into a fist fight with Sophia's brother. Of course, he fought back. He'd be a fool to not fight back. We fought for minutes, and it had to be the most satisfying minute of my life. It was satisfying because it just felt good to transfer all the hate and anger I had for my ex-wife to her brother. I think that's what they call transfer of aggression, right? Well, I think it was worth it. Sophia and her mother practically screamed on top of their lungs, thinking that would be enough to stop us from fighting. Well, it wasn't. The only people that ended the fight were my security guard and one of my neighbors who heard the conflict that was going on. Sophia left with her mother and brother immediately after the fight ended. It was satisfying to watch the horror on her face before she left. I knew that was the sign she needed to know that there was no chance that we were getting back together. After they left that day, I took a long shower and had a cold glass of whiskey. All the anger I felt did not suddenly vanish, but I still felt very relieved. Though I've not seen Sophia for the past few days, I still feel like she's not going to give up yet. I know that what transpired last time is enough to let her know that I am done with her forever, but I'm not sure it's enough to make her leave Daniela alone. Daniela is still with my mother, and I honestly don't want her to come back till further notice. I miss my daughter, but I'm doing this for her own good. I do not want Sophia anywhere near Daniela, and I put plans in place to make sure Daniela and Sophia never meet. I cannot control what happens in the future, but I can control what happens now. And right now, all I want is to make Sophia's life extremely miserable. I don't care if she feels like she's a changed woman and wants to right her wrongs. That's her fucking business, and it has nothing to do with me. She can go on with her repentance alone. I don't care. I will not let Sophia crawl back into my child's life or my life. I'm already talking to a lawyer and we are getting prepared in case she decides to take legal action. I don't even want joint custody. In fact, I want a restraining order if possible. I know it's very hard to get one unless Sophia does something that will require it. I'm ready to go as far as framing her, but my lawyer has advised me not to take that route. I'm trying my best to make sure that the court grants me full custody again. Why did I say again? Well, when Sophia left 10 years ago, she sent me the divorce papers soon after. There was no fight for custody, and that's exactly what must happen now. I'll keep you guys updated on what happens in the next few months because right now I'm focused on talking to my lawyer and getting prepared for whatever Sophia thinks she can throw my way. Please, don't refrain from dropping your comments because I'll try to comment on all of them whenever I get the chance. Till next time, Reddit. Update 2. My dear Redditors, it's been 2 fucking years since I made this post. I am beyond elated to write an update after 2 years. I can't even believe that this post has been up here for 2 good years. Time really does fly, and I'm just beginning to understand that. This experience has been one fucking funny, annoying, and elevating ride, and I'm really grateful it happened. So, let's not waste any time. I saw your comments, and you all have been waiting for this update. So, if you're guessing that Sophia gave up and vanished like she did 10 years ago, you're wrong. Sophia did not take the easy route, and I'm thankful to have predicted her actions before it was too late. She stayed back in the city and made sure she tried to get on my nerves. I got another visit from Sophia 2 months later. She came to my house and asked to see her daughter. Yes, Redditors, Sophia had the nerves to come to my house again. I asked her to get out, obviously, but Sophia came prepared that day. She began to make a scene and tell me how stupid I was if I thought I could separate a mother from her own child. She accused me of trying to make Daniela hate her, and to be honest, I was glad she saw the truth. I'm happy she knows that I want my daughter to despise her. That said, Sophia caused a huge scene at my house. At first, I engaged in an exchange of words with her, which led me into cussing her out. But later, I just sat on the front porch and watched her continuously. Her rants eventually attracted the neighbors who got curious. Some of them who had stayed long enough recognized her as my ex-wife, while the new neighbors did not recognize her at all. The neighbors tried to calm her down, but she was not having it. She cried all over again and told them how I was stopping her from seeing her daughter. I've never really been one to care about public opinion, so it didn't really make a difference to me. I could see that some of the gullible neighbors and human rights activists were judging me with the way they looked at me. But the neighbors that stayed long enough and knew the full story were on my side. Some of the gossipers asked me to tell my side of the story, and I just found that very ridiculous. I didn't need to table the matter in front of anybody and get validation for what I knew was right. I refused because I was not going to give her an upper edge and let people meditate. I knew that there was nothing anybody was going to say that day that would make me change my mind. If I started explaining myself, I'd be telling them that I wanted them to judge a case that was not their business. Some of the neighbors I interacted with before tried to intervene and tell the other neighbors what really happened, but I did not try to input anything. After hours of unnecessary noise, I sent everyone out of my house. When I say everyone, I mean the neighbors and Sophia herself. Nobody was left out, not even my friends were left out. It's common knowledge that people who have never really been through a situation have the tendency to try judge that situation. Most times they just end up using their emotions and what they feel is justice. I did not need justice from anybody. I did not need anyone to give me justice. If you all are wondering where Daniela was that day, she was still with my mother. I enrolled her in another school there because I did not want her to come back till I was sure Sophia was out of the city. Daniela did not like the arrangement at all because changing schools is very hard for children, but I did not leave her with a choice. My mother convinced her with some ice cream, and that settled everything. Since I still had work, I'd go visit them every weekend, then return back to the city. Daniela would wail and cry anytime I got ready to leave. To be honest, I hated myself for spending days away from her, but I had to discipline myself. So, Daniela was not home to witness the scene Sophia caused that day. 4 months later, I started getting hints from some of the people I was close to in the city that Sophia had a new boyfriend who seemed to be rich enough. They also told me that there was a possibility of her getting a lawyer since she had a new rich boyfriend. I was relaxed before because I knew Sophia couldn't afford a lawyer bit. When I was told she had a new rich boyfriend, I knew that I had to take action fast. It was, and still is common knowledge to me that Sophia can be very convincing. She's a woman that has the ability to make you feel pity for her no matter what type of facts you have against her. That's why I did not waste time in hatching up my plan. Weeks later, I was able to get information on Sophia's new boyfriend from a friend. I got to know that he was a guy from a reputable family who came from old money. I'm sure my fellow Redditors know how significant old money is. It's the kind of wealth that has connections and stability. I knew that I had to do something fast, or else Sophia was going to get this new guy under her palms. I had more money than Sophia, but I did not have more money than her new boyfriend. There was every possibility that she was going to get him to get his family lawyer to defend her in court. Of course, guys from rich families have family lawyers who are usually very good at what they do. I was able to come up with a plan, and that plan was to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. My plan was simple, but the execution was nowhere near simple. My dear Redditors, it's always hard for good people like me, LOL, to get vengeance. I was able to get Sophia's boyfriend's, well, his name is Darius, so let's just call him that now. I was able to get Darius' usual schedule from a friend of mine. I knew he worked at a bank and would go to a particular restaurant to cool off after work. I started going to the restaurant regularly and staying there for hours till he got there. I continued that routine for weeks before we finally spoke one day. Thankfully, he did not seem to recognize me. Maybe it helped that I introduced myself in a fake French accent with a very fake name. I started talking about finances, and he seemed to like the topics I brought up. Of course, a guy who works in a bank would want to hear about finance. It was a common logic I used, and thankfully, it worked. We became friends from that day on. 1 week later, I invited him to the restaurant to have lunch with me. That same day, I invited Sophia to the restaurant to have lunch with me. I told Darius that I recently got back with my old partner and that we'd been dating for months. He was excited and told me he wanted to meet her that same day. Sophia arrived at the restaurant before Darius did, and that's because I gave them 2 different times to come. When Sophia arrived, I told her I was ready to get back with her and that I missed her. I even went as far as telling her I broke up with Esther and was ready to let Daniela see her. She was shocked at first and tried playing hard to get, but after some time, she began to give in. We spent minutes talking, and to be honest, that had to be the most wasted minutes of my life. Thankfully, I was able to sight Darius coming from afar, and that was when I leaned in and kissed Sophia. Well, I did not really kiss her because I am disgusted by that woman. I just joined our foreheads together. Yes, my dear Redditors, I had to do what I had to do to get what I wanted. Darius was shocked to see Sophia and I in that position. I introduced her as the girl I've been telling him about, and he told me that Sophia was his girlfriend. I acted surprised and blah blah blah. Long story short, he got angry and left the restaurant. Sophia was so angry that she tried to slap me on the face, but I was able to twist her hands behind her and hold her in place. She got teary-eyed and told me she regretted the day she got married to me. I told her I was surprised it took her so long to regret it because honestly, I've been regretting it for years. She called me several names, some of which I cannot really remember, but the one I remember is betrayer. I was so happy she called me a betrayer because that just made me remind her how she betrayed her own child and how she betrayed me years ago. She stormed out of the restaurant after that, and I went home. Do I feel bad about using Darius? No, I don't. He needs to thank me for saving him from a woman like Sophia. I heard he broke up with her that same day. How do I know? One of my friends is his colleague at the bank. He's the one that told me Darius was dating Sophia in the first place. Even after Sophia tried to tell him I was just her ex-husband, he did not want to get involved in the drama. He's from a reputable family, and we all know how they hate to get into shit. Sophia lost her rich boyfriend thanks to me, and I still enjoy that fact till this day. I'm happy that I was able to take something from her life. I'm happy that I gave her hope of us getting back together that day, then snatched it all from her. It's almost a replication of what she did to me many years ago. Of course, Sophia did not give up. She filed for joint custody in court, but the case watered down in the first few weeks. She was not stable enough, and she was absent for too long in my daughter's life. I thought she'd not give up, but maybe she ran out of money and decided not to go on with the case. Even though the custody fight ended and Sophia seemed to not show herself to me for months, I was not ready to have her show up again in the future. I wanted my daughter to have a stable life without a mother who appeared and disappeared anytime she had enough money to do so. After months of trying, I was able to get a job transfer out of town. I don't want to mention our new location for personal reasons, but I was able to get far away from our old town. My daughter is back to living with me, and we've spent months making up for the time we spent away from each other. Another important news, I got married to Esther. She's been a great mother to Daniela, and that's all I ever wanted. Our marriage has been great, and we're still learning to understand each other. That's what's been going on in my life, guys. Thanks for all your supportive comments and suggestions. I'm thankful to each and every one of you. Cheers.